I see it said quite often that people believe you can't evaluate a system, say a DAC, headphone amp, streamer, whatever, that you can't evaluate a system with headphones the same way you can with speakers. And sometimes it's just an offhand comment, sometimes it's said with a bit of vitriol behind it, and I thought it was worth a conversation about it. Because I do use speakers. I'm not a speaker-focused channel. I'm a headphone-focused channel, probably first and foremost. But it's not that I don't use speakers, and it's not that I haven't spent many years with speakers prior to recent times when my house living situation doesn't really suit a speaker setup. So what I've found over the years is that speakers are great for soundstage understanding, but they're not the only way to do it. And I think what happens when people complain that you can't judge things like soundstage from speakers, or sorry, from headphones, I think what's actually going on there is that it's going to come down to the source chains that they've used headphones with. Because there's a number of things that can go on within a system that can reduce the ability for a system to produce soundstage, particularly soundstage depth. And one of those is the headphone amplifier itself. There are a lot of headphone amplifiers on the market. I'd go so far as saying pretty much any headphone amp that I've tried that is not a discrete design, discrete meaning that it uses individual components like resistors, transistors, capacitors, etc. to produce the sound. All of those that instead use a single chip-based op-amp design, almost all of them, if not all of them, will flatten the soundstage. And so if you're trying to evaluate a DAC that produces good soundstage, or a streamer, or any component in your system that should have an influence on soundstage, but you're running it through one of those op-amp based and particularly nested feedback type, you know, your toppings, FIOs, SMSLs, a lot of those amps that are running what they call nested feedback, which is like the THX design. Any of those amplifiers are going to flatten the soundstage in my experience. And so you're not going to be able to tell if DAC A stage is better than DAC B if you're running headphones with that DAC via an amplifier that flattens the soundstage. Having said that, if you run those same DACs through some great discrete headphone amps, which could be anything from a Duchenne Labs A3 Pro, a Schiit Mjolnir 3, an Auna S17 Pro, a Singer SA1, any of the Burson audio products, the, what am I forgetting here? I mentioned the Bursons, Enlium Amp 23R, Zale HM1. As you can see, there's a big list. I'm deliberately listing these just to show how many amps there are that do this. If you're running through those amplifiers, you can absolutely hear how well a DAC can stage. Not only that, but you can also hear more from headphones than you can from speakers. And that's because when you're listening through headphones, the sound is being piped directly into your ears. And whilst, yes, that does reduce the maximum size of the soundstage, so I'm not saying that headphones are better than speakers, I'm saying they're different and they have their own benefits. So yes, a set of speakers will give you a greater scale of the soundstage, and maybe it will give you a slightly better sense of just how big the soundstage is. Maybe you'll get a better sense of some of the nuances of staging, but you'll still know the differences in staging between headphones and speakers. And then because the headphones are actually attached to your ears and pumping straight to your ears, you're not getting any of the trade-offs that you get with speakers when the room starts to interfere with the sound. You're not getting the issue with the fact that person A's stereo speaker setup is in a room with certain characteristics, whilst somebody else is listening to a similar set of speakers but in a different room with different characteristics. All of that can change the sound more. Whereas from one headphone to the next, the only variable then is our ears, and that's going to be true for every single person, whether it's speakers or headphones. So the point here, I guess, that I'm making is that I actually find headphones more revealing of a system. I've tried reviewing systems on speaker setups and then the same systems on headphone setups, and inevitably the headphone setup gives me more insight. I can understand exactly the same level of detail about the soundstage in my experience, but then I'm also able to understand more about the really fine detail stuff, the retrieval of micro details in the mix. So little things like mouth noises or exactly how close the singer was to the microphone, or the little tiny reflections that you might hear off the studio or the venue walls. All of those things are better to me on headphones than they are on speakers, and it's all because you've got the sound coming directly into your ears, versus with a set of speakers, the moment the sound leaves the drivers on the speaker, particularly for treble, it starts dropping off. And the further you are from those speakers, the more drop off there is in those sounds. And so you're going to be losing those micro details. You're going to be losing some of those fine cues that you can get from headphones you can't get from speakers. This is not to say that speakers are bad. This is not to say that headphones are better than speakers. I love the fact that we can have both, because headphones have benefits, speakers have benefits. The long and the short of this is that a good listener, a good reviewer can tell the same things about a system, in my experience and in my opinion, regardless of what they're using. An equally performing speaker setup and an equally performing headphone setup will tell you the same things. They'll tell it to you differently. They'll both have their own strengths and weaknesses from an enjoyment point of view, but you'll get the same insight in both directions. And if anything, you might get a little bit more on the detail retrieval side of things from the headphones, and maybe a tiny bit of extra nuance about the soundstage from the speakers. But it's not enough that you'd say that one is the only way you can do either. Both can do everything, in my opinion, just as well. So I thought I'd share that. If you agree, disagree, if you want to share your own experiences, please do down in the comments. As always as well, if you've got a question or a topic for conversation that you want me to chat about on this sort of format of car chats, then please let me know that in the comments as well. For now though, as always, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.